And let's start in Knoxville, Tennessee. And day 2 of the Joel Guy Jr. double murder trial. He, of course, is accused of killing and dismembering his parents after they decided to cut him off financially. This morning, the defendant sauntered into the courtroom carrying his briefcase, wearing his shield, and getting ready for another day in court. Almost seeming to be eager for another day. Had a little pep in his step as he got himself a little water, got his pen ready to go and take some notes, and ready to sit down and listen to the gory details surrounding the brutal murder of his parents.
I had absolutely no idea what I was walking into.
Okay. So you made it through the master bedroom. Let's talk about what you experienced in the master bathroom.
I went in the master bathroom, and the only thing I saw were 2 tubs with what appeared to be body parts liquefying.
Is the heat, are you experiencing more heat upstairs than you are downstairs?
It's hotter upstairs than downstairs.
And how about the odors or presence of chemicals?
It's I'll never get those smells out of my head or my dreams.
Joining me from outside the courthouse in Knoxville, Tennessee, Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter, and also with us, Court TV special contributor Ashley Banfield. Good evening to both of you. Chanley, I want to start with you. You were in the court all day, another day of emotional testimony from the gory details of what happened, so sort of a follow-up from yesterday, and then some things that were sort of second-level emotional little things, like the victim at Walmart buying clothes, the same clothes this jury saw in a much different condition.
Yeah, that was a moving part of the day, and the jurors saw those images in the morning and then again in the afternoon, reinforcing that this was the last moments that Lisa Guy was alive, November 26, 2016. And to think and sit there that here she is at doing something normal we all do at the grocery store. You have a list of groceries. She's checking out at Walmart, and she's walking out to her car and knowing that she's going to go home and, according to the prosecutors, be attacked. And we remember those groceries scattered throughout the foyer floor. We saw those pictures yesterday and some again today about those groceries scattered there. We know that that was where she met her end, and she's wearing, like you said, the same clothes that they found, the investigators found at the top of the stairs, bloodied with rips and holes all in the clothes. The prosecutor showing those photos yesterday to the jury, making a big statement about how she died back in 2016. But what a moment. It's really eerie to sit there and see her last moments, and I was looking towards the defendant and seeing what his reaction may be to watch his mother at the grocery store right before her life ended. There was no overt reaction, Ted, from him today.
Yeah, and Ashley, jurors do look at defendants. In a case like this, I'm sure they are sneaking peeks throughout the trial. How, in your estimation, you've covered dozens of trials along with me. We won't go into the numbers because then we'd look too old. But the bottom line is jurors, they want to see what the defendant does. They want to see what how they react. And this was one of those moments where you're going to look over and say, hey, what's this guy going to do when he sees his mother in the last minutes that she was alive before he allegedly killed her?
Yeah, and I got to be honest, he seemed to be so nonplussed throughout everything, except for the one moment yesterday where he seemed to be almost excited for a very brief instant, almost smirking. I'm not going to read into it. It looked like that. It might not have been. But he also seemed very sleepy today. It seemed to me like he was just tired. And yes, you are right. Jurors don't miss a beat. Not only do they stare at the defendant, but they look behind him and they look at the gallery and they see who is there, who looks like it might be family members, which family members look to be very supportive, which family members look to be missing, where are the victims' family members? In this case, they're all the same people. This is so difficult. Joel and Lisa Guy were parents to 4 kids. And so it's really hard for the jurors to try to assess who is there for this young man, Joel Guy Jr. Is there anyone there? Because they should be behind defendant's table in support of him. But they are going to also have to be in support of their parents, obviously. They don't miss anything, though, honest to God. We may not see the jurors on television, but when you sit in a courtroom and you see them, their necks are on a swivel.
Chanley, what has been the jury reaction? I mean, it's a little different scenario. They're not in the jury box with that front row seat. They're scattered throughout the courtroom.
You're correct. And so it's a different experience for the jurors. In fact, I noticed right at the end of court today, the judge asking the jurors before they left the courtroom to make sure that even those sitting back, 8 rows back in the gallery on one side, that they heard everything, that they saw everything in evidence. So he's even confirming, because again, the defense has raised some objections over this social distancing with jurors spread out in the jury box in the gallery, because when you're sitting back there on that side, you maybe see the profile, maybe the back of the head of the defendant. You don't always see his reactions. They're farther away from the witnesses testifying. And he wanted to make sure that they could hear and see everything. And this morning he checked also. So that's something he's trying to do to safeguard this process. Today I noticed the jurors taking in a lot of meticulous crime scene information. A lot of notes were taken, but they all seemed to be pretty attentive throughout the day, even though it could get a little tedious at times.
One of the big witnesses today was Officer Sandlin. Let's take a listen to some of that testimony.
Minimize things I touch throughout visit. Wear gloves and socks to prevent fingerprints and footprints. Drop something down the garbage disposal to break it. Get him on the ground fixing it. Kill him with the knife. Clean up mess from him before she gets home. Kill her with knife. There's a part that's crossed out. Kill dog after. Douse killing rooms, kitchen with bleach. Place hair curler with flammable paper and flammable containers of gasoline in 4 locations. His killing room, her killing room, his bathroom, her bathroom. Wipe down areas near killing rooms and bathrooms. Turn heaters up to 90 degrees to melt fingerprints and dry everything. Set her phone to send me a text message late Sunday to prove that I was in BR and she was alive, in quotation marks. Leave, and I can't read the word that's marked out, through front door and wipe down doorknobs. Timer for flammables set for Friday at 10 a.m. Sunlight masks fire, but not smoke. Everyone at work, so they can't report it.
Ashley, why do you think the defendant wants to go through with this trial? The amount of evidence is overwhelming.
Yeah, all I kept thinking when I, heard every single meticulous detail annotated in these notebooks was, boy, are you dumb. I mean, you went to all that trouble and then you just kind of allowed those notebooks to fall into the investigators' hands. Oh, and then the trip to Walmart where you were seen on video buying all of your diabolical supplies. And listen, this is a college kid, right? So much of it just doesn't make any sense to me. The fact that he wants to represent himself if there is a sentencing phase whereby he wants to ask for the death penalty, even though the prosecutors haven't. The guy's not dealing with a full deck. I think that's clear to all of us. I'm shocked that this isn't an insanity defense, even though I know full well he hadn't got a hope in you-know-what of getting it because he wanted to clean up everything he knew was wrong. I'm surprised that they're not going through the motions of an insanity defense just to at least get it in the minds of the juror that he's just terribly, terribly sick. I mean, who does this, right? Who does this kind of thing without being terribly, terribly sick?
Yeah, who puts their mother's head in a pot? And Chanley, today the jury saw that stock pot.
And they did indeed. Now, they saw a picture yesterday, but it's different, right? When the investigator, the crime scene forensic technician is unpackaging it from the box and holding it up, standing up, holding it up and showing it to all the jurors so they can see this, and just knowing what was in it, what investigators found when they conducted this welfare check. And we heard testimony from Detective McCord today that you could still hear 4 years later how much this crime scene still affects him today. When he went to the stove, he said yes, he did take the lid off. He did see what was inside. It was a human head, a severed head inside the stove, and it was still boiling with some sort of liquid on the stove. In fact, the stove was on, the oven was on, there were heaters throughout the house. It was above 95 degrees inside that home, and the jurors knew that. So this moment that we're watching now, she holds it up, was a significant moment today. And like I said earlier, the jurors were taking a lot of notes. I was impressed of the notes today, keeping up with this evidence, and a lot of it, Ted, coincides with that journal we just heard. You know, we hear this journal entry being read today, and all the evidence from the scene just sort of eerily coincides with that journal.
Yeah. Ashley, the effect on a jury, you know, seeing these types of things, we're going to talk about it later, actually, next hour of the show, but it's real, isn't it? I mean, you're on jury duty, you get a summons in the mail, okay, I'm going to go do my civic duty, and 2 weeks later, you're looking at a crock pot and you knew what was in it.
Hey, the effect on Shanley. She's there. She's watching it in person. I was watching it on television. I felt sick to my stomach. And we are seasoned. I mean, Shanley's a lot younger than I am, but we've been through this stuff before, right? We've seen this stuff before. We saw the Jodi Arias, Travis Alexander's pictures. We saw Casey Anthony's baby, her skull with duct tape on it. We saw Dahmer evidence. We've seen it all, right? And that doesn't mean that I'm not really revulsed by it. So I cannot, for the life of me, figure out what those people in the courtroom were thinking when they watched this happen. I'll tell you one thing that was going through my head, and don't ask me why. It was maybe I was trying to get my mind off of what really happened in there. I thought right away, did they clean it? Did they clean it before they brought that into that courtroom? Was that courtroom defiled by the hideous, horrendous horror that happened in that pot? And those were the things I started just thinking of. And I wonder if the jury was thinking the same thing, or if they just didn't know what to think. Because again, I've got 33 years of this. They've got all of, I think, a day and a half. And Ted, I'm glad that you mentioned 9 o'clock, because 9 o'clock Eastern in the next hour, you and I are going to talk about it, because I'll tell you something. There's a lot that's going on in America right now with juries who come and serve, who cannot be prepared for this kind of stuff. You're not allowed to prepare juries for this kind of stuff because it could taint the actual process. So what's wrong with this picture and what's done after the fact? That is going to surprise you. We're going to talk about that in the next hour.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Shanley, what's tomorrow? What are we expecting?
Well, we're expecting more law enforcement officers to take the witness stand, and that's what we can expect. So it may be a little tedious, but they're going to continue walking us through the crime scene, what they found, what was discovered, when and where, because again, this was an extensive crime scene, something like they've never seen. We've heard testimony about that. And even, I know I've talked about these huge evidence carts. They rolled into the courtroom. They roll them in every morning. One of those officers in charge of guarding the carts says that she's been working there at the sheriff's office for 15 years. She's never seen this much evidence in any trial.
All right, our coverage starts 9 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. You can watch this trial, day 3, play out live. Shanley will be there in the courtroom. Shanley, thank you.